This morning, an article in this week's New York Times Magazine is drawing a lot of attention. The headline asks this question: does a more equal marriage mean less sex? It's written by psychotherapist Lori Gottlieb, who's in Los Angeles this morning. She's also the author of Marry Him, the case for settling for Mr. Good Enough. And here in Studio 57, I like that title, Sari Cooper. She's also a psychotherapist who works with couples, and she joins us in the studio. Good to see you both. Lori, I'm going to start with you in Los Angeles, because most people would think equal relationship means better sex life, but in your article you wrote this: the very qualities that lead to a greater emotional satisfaction in peer marriages may be having an unexpectedly negative impact on these couples' sex lives. So at one point you said gender neutral has turned into gender neutered. What do you mean?
Well, it turns out that a lot of the qualities that we pick our partners based on, most people are now going into egalitarian marriages where we pick people who are very similar to us. But it turns out that people who are in these marriages have a lot of sameness, and it decreases the sexual heat between them.
So are you saying egalitarian marriage is bad?
No, not at all, not at all. I'm saying that, you know, every era has its own sexual difficulties, and in peer marriages, there are certain challenges that people need to be aware of.
In fact, you make a distinction about the kinds of household chores that men do based on how much sex they have. Tell us what you mean.
Right. So there were these studies that I cite in the article where they found that if men did more feminine chores like dishes, laundry, those kinds of things, as opposed to doing more masculine chores like taking out the trash, fixing the car, they had sex 1.5 fewer times per month than the men who did the masculine chores.
But Lori, we should note, because I did go and look up that study. That study is more than 20 years old, correct?
No, some of the data about the sex is from the 90s, but it turns out that the household chore data is much more recent. And if we were seeing some difference in terms of, like, let's say that men did more feminine chores and that was more sexy, you would see a difference there, too. So the person who did the study said they don't really think that much has changed there.
Okay, Charlie, what chores do you like to do? I mean, I think that helps add to the conversation, no? Okay, go ahead. Just wondering.
Suppose a couple has this problem.
Right.
What do they do?
All right. So what I thought was interesting about the article is it, first of all, brought up the conversation. And as a sex therapist, people come in to my office with sex as a problem.
So this article didn't surprise you, though, did it?
Not at all. In fact, the phone call I usually get is, my husband and I are best friends. We do everything together. We hardly ever fight. There's just one little problem. That's the initial phone call. And what I think the article really pointed out very beautifully in one of the clinical examples is when the husband came home from the gym and the wife said, you know, I was so turned on when I saw you getting into the shower with your hot, sweaty musk. Yeah. And instead of going down, choosing sex by going towards that, instead, she focused on the clothes on the floor. And in that little moment, I thought was a beautiful example of what goes on between these couples.
Right.
Do couples, do you think that we have to, because one guy in the article also said, I know what a 50-50 marriage is, I don't know what a 50-50 sex life is.
Right. And also in that article, I thought, you know, to your point, one man described, isn't it enough that I have semi-respectful sex with my wife? And I
semi-respectful sex.
Exactly.
Qu'est-ce que c'est?
Well, so I think what's interesting about this article is that people differentiate between what they feel like they're allowed and entitled to do with their wife or husband out of due respect, and what they feel like they want to do or think about or fantasize in their brain. And that conversation does not take place. Which
Sex
is what
begins in the brain, doesn't it?
It really does. And, you know, to answer your question, Charlie, I think that's what I allow people to do in the room. I start the conversation about, well, what are you really sort of thinking about? What are you interested in exploring without pressure? What turns you on? And it's amazing what people are, you know, once they're given permission, what they start to talk about.
Keep going, Charlie.
and you know, but
He knows I'm true.
But you know, Charlie, I think you're asking the right question,
Thank you.
which is not only
He always does.
which is not only what turns you on, you know, husband or wife, but what turns me on.
Can I just ask
exactly
Lori
right.
really quickly, what's been the reaction to this article?
I think the reaction has really started a conversation because a lot of people don't really talk about this. I'm a therapist also, and a lot of people will talk about all kinds of things that are going on in the relationship. Who's doing the pickup? Who's picking up the cereal on the way home? You know, what's going on domestically, but they're not, or what's going on even in their communication, but they're not communicating about sex.
And I think it's good that you got people talking. Thank you, Lori Gottlieb. Good to see you,
Thank you.
Sari Cooper.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.